Hi guys, welcome back to the 888 podcast with Rachel and
Leosa.
Today we wanted to talk a little bit about ourselves. I think we've dropped a couple of episodes already, and I'm sure anybody who's here with us is wondering who we are. Why are we qualified to talk about this? Where do we come from? So we're going to touch base a little bit on, our history, where we grew up, what kind of families we were raised in, the inspiration for kind of how we got here and things like that. So I'll go first. So as you know, my name is Rachel. I grew up in Connecticut, like Leosa, but I was born here, unfortunately. Just kidding. But yeah, so I was raised with, my mom and my dad were married. They got divorced when I was 10. My childhood, I have a little brother. My childhood was rocky, to say the least. My parents got divorced, because my mom cheated on my dad and could not stop cheating on my dad. So that was fun. My household was, I would classify it as abusive. I was diagnosed with PTSD when I was 18, so that is definitely a testament to a wonderful childhood. But honestly, just to preface, as I go into this, all of my experiences have made me who I am today, and I don't regret any of them. And I wouldn't change any of them because, again, I wouldn't be this person. I wouldn't have learned the lessons. So I grew up with, two parents, little brother, we had 2 dogs, a cat, 2 cars, the whole 9. It was cute. But it was interesting. I grew up in a nicer town, I guess you could say. It's definitely not there's richer towns and there's poorer towns. So it's middle class. But it was very interesting for me because the kids I went to school with were on the weller off side. Everybody had a car by senior year except for me. And just everybody had the name brand clothes at the time and stuff like that. It wasn't we were in an impoverished area where nobody could afford anything, because that's a completely different experience that I can't speak on. But unique for me was I was always kind of the odd one out. I was the hand-me-down kid. My parents didn't have money for a lot of things, even when they were together. What I've learned as an adult is that they were really good about keeping up with appearances, and that was really important to specifically my mom. But my parents, on the inside, had liens on their houses. The house ended up getting foreclosed on and stuff. So even though my parents, looked like adults, they really weren't adults at home, financially or emotionally. So I was the kid that, rode the bus until graduation day, senior year of high school. I was the only senior on the bus still. Had my license, just we couldn't afford a car. Even though I worked full time by that point. I got my first job at 13, because I had to support myself. I stopped living with my mom when I was 14. My parents got divorced when I was 10, finalized when I was 13. I stopped living with my mom when I was 14 because I was tired of the abuse, physical and emotional, but specifically the physical at that time anyway. So I started living with my dad full time, and my dad, as much as I love him, and he is still always there for me to this day, and I will not speak negatively about him. He's what I like to call a teenager in an adult's body. He just didn't really support the household financially. He would buy bread, milk, and eggs, and that was about it. I had to buy all other food. I had, for the most part, he would bring home takeout from the restaurant he worked at, but that was about it. I had to buy my own food. I had to buy my own school supplies. I've had my own phone bill and everything since I was 14. Just everything. I remember, I'll never forget, I graduated high school senior year, and I was working over 45 hours a week in high school. I worked I started at 13 working at my grandparents' nursery. They, thankfully my grandparents had, a business that I was allowed to work at under the table. So that was great. It afforded me some things, but even that business, when my grandfather passed, it wasn't, we all thought we were getting money and we weren't. He was in debt. So yeah, just, not a super affluent, childhood. I guess I could say like, I usually had what I needed, but I've definitely been hungry, things like that. And then, growing up in a town where everybody has more than enough, you get made fun of for not having, the newest shoes and things like that. And then, the abuse with my mom was very much directed at me. My brother really did not experience the same level of abuse that I did. We can get into that, I guess, if anybody has questions, but, basically, my mom kind of took everything out on me. I remember the first time I heard her tell my grandma on the phone that she did not love me and that she loved my brother. I was 6. I knew my mom was cheating on my dad when I was 6. I didn't know what to do with that information. Just a lot of stuff. And then, as I got older, looking back on everything, I started to get depressed and I wondered why. And, now I look back and I see why, but I started, with some self-destructive tendencies very early on. I was in middle school when I started to self-harm. My first hospitalization for mental health, I attempted to unalive myself. I was 14 or 15. I had been, essayed by a man in his 20s 2 months prior to that. And that really kind of started like my mental health journey. That first hospitalization, I was done. I didn't want to be here anymore. And that was one of the most pivotal moments of my life, because I remember being in the hospital and thinking, I had nothing to lose at that point by talking to the therapists. My thought process was I'm either going to talk to them and maybe they'll help me and maybe they'll make me, help me not feel this way anymore, or I'm going to go home and I'm going to not fail this time. So that was really really hard. Things didn't get better. They got worse before they got better. I think like with most things but, it was the start of, a lot of really intense therapy for me that it has done a lot of work. It's still to this day, I'm in therapy. I don't ever see myself completing it, and not because like there's anything wrong with me, but I truly believe that everybody could use a therapist, even the most stable, happy person in the world. Like it definitely doesn't hurt to have an unbiased third opinion or perspective on your life, or somebody that just isn't involved in your life that can listen to you. But anyway, I digress. So I experienced a lot of that stuff. In high school, I started using substances, alcohol, marijuana, other things. And I went on a journey with that. I'm an addict in recovery always. If I speak on things like that, it's because I've experienced them. So I had my run-in with substances. I moved out of my house when I was 19 and got my own apartment. Just really didn't have a stable family life, and I was dying to get out. I would have left sooner, but I went to college for a year and lived on campus and ended up getting suspended for getting into a domestic fight with my ex from college. So, get arrested for assault on campus, you get suspended. So there was that. Lot of stuff, but I've been on my own for, my whole life, but I've been in my own apartment for about 6 years now, doing a lot of really great things since then. Let me see, what else is relevant? I'm trying to give some of my backstory. been in, a few not so great relationships. I'm, lucky to say that my daughter's father is somebody that did not abuse me physically at the very least. So that's great for me, but it's okay. I laugh at myself too. But it's been a journey. I was the black sheep of my family growing up. I never felt like anybody, loved or cared about me. And that really shapes your experiences as a child growing up. So I have been to hell and back in my own world. I know there's different experiences of that and whatnot, but I have definitely experienced my fair share of trauma and struggles. I have made my own situation worse. There are things that, weren't my fault, and then there are things that are my fault and that I take accountability for. But yeah, so now what I do, for years I worked, at restaurants, waitressing jobs in high school and after high school and college. And then I translated my waitressing experience to car sales. So I am currently the business development manager, the BDC manager at a dealership in my area. So I've made a comfortable living out of, what I used to do. And yeah, ultimately I've been in therapy for about 16 years. I started when I was 10, but really started working on it when I was about 14 or 15. So really, really been going hard on it for about 10 or 11 years. I've met a lot of people. I've had a lot of experiences. I am still very young and I have a lot of life left to live, but I speak on a lot of the things that I speak on very passionately because I've been there and I understand what it's like to be there and to pull yourself out of it. A lot of people around me don't tend to pull themselves out of it as fast as I have. I do say that is a fairly unique part of my experience. But I've also always been very self-aware. I remember even in the years where I was choosing not the best things for myself, that I was aware that I was choosing the wrong thing. But I was in so much pain that I just wanted to let it happen for the time being. I wasn't ready to deal with it or address it or feel it. So I was running for a really long time, for a really, really, really long time. And I am still a work in progress. I think every single person, while you're breathing on this earth, you're a work in progress. But I have really come a very, very long way. I almost didn't graduate high school. I, went to a few mental health schools, and really just, I have a few driving factors, obviously my experiences, but the biggest thing for me that has always pushed me to work on myself was a very deep fear of becoming my mother. And I think a lot of women can relate to that, especially if they don't have, great idealistic mothers. But I knew as long as that I could remember that I really wanted to be a mom and that I wanted more than anything to not be my own mother. And that has been the driving force since I was in elementary school, middle school. I knew that before I could ever deserve to be a mother, that I needed to work on myself, and that I needed to figure out how to not repeat the mistakes of my mom. So I really committed a lot of time, even before like kids were, something I would have considered. I knew that I had to get to a point where I just wasn't her. I'm very proud of the person I am today. I'm very proud of the person I'm becoming. I'm very proud of the mother that I am. I've done a lot of hard work to earn these things. So yeah, I'm trying to think what else would be relevant to our conversation. Oh, I should probably address the elephant in the room, which is me. I'm fat.
I'm sorry, you're just so funny.
Listen, it's just real. Like, I know we're going to get comments about it. Like, oh, who's this from, talking about whatever. that is fine.
That's what I love about her. Like, she is so real and logical, and that is so hard to find. Like, someone with that same mindset that just tells it how it is.
I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I've had friends my entire life tell me, if you want the truth, you ask Rachel. So, like, I'll have friends be like, oh, do I look good in this outfit? And they'll be like, oh, no.
No, like, I 100%
and they'll be like, ask Rachel.
trust in her opinion.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I've learned a lot about delivery and, you know, getting my point across effectively. Like, delivery is very much key. But I'm very self-aware. I'm very grounded in reality. I know what's going on.
Her weight loss journey has been so amazing.
That's what I want to talk about. So, you know, I've always struggled with my weight, you know, and relating it to the trauma, it makes sense. You either hold on to weight or you don't. Your body keeps the scores.
Oh my God, yes. I love that book.
But it's very true.
You've been telling me about it.
Mm-hmm. So I have, I've always struggled with my weight, but never as bad as the last year or so. Not a surprise to anybody. Having a child didn't help. You know, that's kind of what happens, especially when you're not in like your, you know, the best place physically when you have a child. So I gained 80 pounds with my daughter. I was never a skinny girl. I was always thick, as they would like to say. But it was having my daughter, an 80-pound gain is a lot. So I'm proud to say I'm 50 pounds down in the last year, 40 pounds in the last 5 months specifically. So, you know, again, I know I talk a lot about health and things like that. And, you know, what are my qualifications for talking about health as a fat person? That I've been there. My qualifications for speaking on it is that I've been there. I've been a large person my whole life, specifically the last year or two. I've been very large, and I know what kind of disordered thinking, mindset, eating habits, all of those things that have gotten me here. So when I tell you something and I say something and it sounds mean, it is truly coming from a place of love. But yeah, I one thing I really like about our, you know, dynamic is that I think we kind of deal with very opposite issues. Lay will talk a little bit about her fitness journey as well, but she had the opposite goal. She was very skinny and she was working to put on weight. And I, you know, am very large, working to lose the weight.
And we were talking about this and actually the other day, and I was saying that, you know, it's kind of good that we started this journey where you're at right now, because when you do say these triggering things, because it's one thing when it's coming from me, people are going to be like, shut up. Like, you know, nobody. You
don't know what you're talking about. What kind of struggles have you ever had with your weight?
Yeah, everybody's going to look at me and not take me seriously and not think that I'm coming from a
place of understanding.
Yeah, compassionate place, which honestly is the truth, because I've never been there. So I can't really speak on that. But I was like, it's kind of a good thing that people are going to watch your weight loss journey as we go on with this, because from you, it's like they can't use that with you. It's like you are coming from that place and actually transmuting all of that into becoming the best version of yourself. So accountability
needs to be taken to get you where you want to go, regardless of what end of the spectrum you're on.
Period.
So I'm going to let Lay talk about herself a little bit. I'll probably maybe jump in a little bit to add some things about myself, but
yeah, jump in whenever. But okay, so I have a little bit of a hard time with vulnerability because it's not my strong suit. I don't know why, but I know as I'm doing this, you know,
it's uncomfortable.
Right. I think how you said you're a really good communicator and you get your point across really good. Sometimes, like, I have a hard time with that, but
I've told my story to 100,000 therapists multiple times. So that's the other thing. I'm very good with okay, let me get to the
I'm getting better at it though. Like this last year, I've been really big with vulnerability, and it's been like so cringe to me, but I realize that I can help a lot of people. So
being authentic is really where again, we've talked about this.
100%.
Where you're radiating that authentic energy is where you're going to
the highest frequency. So,
yeah, and that's where you're going to help people. That's when you're going to start like influencing people's lives. So Lay's going to be a little bit less forward than me.
Yeah, but I'm going to try to get there. So basically, I wasn't born in the U.S. I was born in a small country called Kosovo. The city I was born in is Pristina, and I was born in a war. I was I came to this country with my family. I was only 3 months old, so I don't remember any of this, but my parents have told me like stories, and it's crazy. It's very traumatic. So I what they went through is crazy.
And epigenetics is crazy too. So your parents, and especially your mom, feeling that stuff when she was pregnant with you.
Yeah, 100%. And I was born actually like a day before like a crazy amount of bombs went off, which is, it, like I said, it's just very crazy experience.
It's a wild
and
experience.
we came to this country as refugees. So we came here as refugee, and we were I grew up in a very like poverty town, I would say, like city. And it's because obviously they came here with nothing. So they weren't able to,
They were just trying to survive.
yeah, they just came here with whatever America gave them to work with. But no, it's crazy. Like, I don't even have a birth certificate because I was born in a house. Like, there was no hospitals at the time. Like, there was no documentation of births being happening. It was
insane.
Yeah, my mom has told me the craziest things. So I really sympathize with people who are like going through like, things like war.
Things like that, yeah.
Because like I said, I was 3 months old, so I didn't really experience, I don't remember any of this, but
your genetics do.
Yeah.
Your body does.
Right, 100%. I do believe in that. Like
it's scientifically proven.
Even if you don't remember it, your body still
keeps the score.
Right, keeps that trauma within you. But no, so I grew up in a very like urban, like, city, which had a lot of poverty, and I grew up in projects, what you would call them, right? So I grew up in that area until I was about 10 years old, 11 years old. I was going into middle school. But yeah, during that time, honestly, I was an only child till I was 9 years old. And my parents were together, but they had a very abusive relationship. And I've never seen my parents like show love to each other, if that makes sense. They were very always like argumentative and toxic. And I never got a healthy idea of what love looked like. My parents were also Muslim, so I grew up in a very like religious, strict kind of household. But they obviously didn't practice what they preached, but they
tried.
They projected those ideals onto me, yeah. So I don't know, I think when you grow up, you realize like how your parents' relationships
have affected you
so much. That has affected me my whole life, and it never really clicked until I grew up. But so I was an only child till I was 9. Honestly, I never felt like poor or anything because I was an only child, so I was super spoiled. But I was spoiled for the town I lived in, right? Or city, because these kids had way less than me, and most of them had, multiple siblings. And my parents, they weren't rich or anything, but they both had jobs. And
your parents came from one of the worst situations imaginable. They wanted to give you everything that they could.
No, 100%. I was the only girl. And my mom actually came here not by herself. She came with my grandparents and her sister, her sister and her brother and my uncle. But my dad didn't come till I was 3 because the way that like not everybody got approved to come. Yep. So my mom was able to bring my dad when I was 3. So I didn't even have my dad here till I was 3. We lived with my grandma. Sorry. But we all lived in government housing all of us stuffed in a unit. And then eventually my mom got her own unit in the same complex because she had a kid. And yeah, honestly, I never, until I was like 10 years old, I never felt like the struggles of poverty in any way. I can say that.
Did everything they could to protect you from that. I respect that.
Yeah, 100%. I was super spoiled. I got like any toy in the store that I wanted. Like I was, daddy's girl. Like my dad bought me like whatever, nothing crazy, but kid stuff.
For poverty, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
So when we moved to a more middle class town, a more high class town, the same town that Rachel lives in, this is how we went to school together. I was in middle school. And I remember like coming to this town and I was like the ghetto girl because I was wearing like Jordans and I was like, you know, I had like that hood kind of attitude, and everybody here was like super preppy, super.
Yeah, that's the town we
You
live.
know?
Again, driving daddy's BMW to school. Like that's the vibes
And
here.
I couldn't believe it when I seen like my friends. I made new friends, and when I would go to my friend's house, they would invite me over. They had these like super huge mansions with like in-ground pools and trampolines, and I was so angry at my parents. I used to be so angry at my parents, and I used to look at them and say, like, why didn't you get your life together? Like, why do we not have this? Mind you, the condo we're filming in right now, this place at my apartment, I grew up here when I moved to Southington.
Really?
Yes.
You never told me that. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I grew up.
Recently moved here.
Yeah,
so.
I recently moved here last year. But this is where my mom wanted to put me in a good school system so bad because I was always like, I was the kid that like was super confrontational. I wasn't really scared of like.
Very strong-willed.
Really strong-willed, hard-headed, yes. So I was already getting suspended in elementary school for fighting. Like I was already like kind of headed on the wrong road. So, and mind you, my parents didn't model like
healthy relationships either,
so I kind of probably projected what I was seeing at home outwards. But my mom really tried to move us out of those circumstances. Yeah. So we came to this town, but we moved here in like a small apartment, a condo. So we didn't really like. I wasn't on the same level as a lot of these kids were, and it was like super embarrassing because I used to not want to invite my friends over to see my house because
compared to what they were living in.
I was like, what the hell? I was like, oh my God.
We were the, when my parents lost their house and I went for foreclosure, we were the apartment people in this town. There's
no apartment people
like
in these
3 apartments in this town.
Unless they're like elderly living or
That's
they call the area where it is like subsidized housing, because I think they do
have
one area. It's like one street.
And
literally.
It's like that's like the ghetto.
And it's not even ghetto at all.
At all. But yeah, no, so to be a condo kid or an apartment kid in this town is insane.
My friends had mansions. Like and it was and my parents, like at that point when my mom had moved here, they were very on and off. So my dad would like leave for like a few months and then come back, and it was just a very like weird dynamic. So my mom didn't have like full financial help all the time because my dad was like coming and going, and it felt very weird. And on top of that, I was an only child till 9, and then my mom had my brother and my sister back to back when I was 9 years old. And my sister, I love her so much, but she was born with a heart condition. So she was in the hospital like the first year of her life. Like I remember I lived with my grandma that year. It was right before we moved here, and I barely even saw my mom, and it was just a very weird dynamic. And then when she finally did come home with my sister, she had my brother. So I went from like being the star of the show, like being the one in the spotlight, and then nobody paid attention to me. And this was happening through my like puberty years, which is like the worst time because that's I feel like when you need your mom to be
guidance,
there. Yeah, you need like, you know, and my mom literally would like be like, and I get it because she was going through a lot too, so I don't, you know,
blame her.
I don't blame her, but yeah, it was a very weird shift in my life, and that ended up, you know, me kind of getting into trouble in high school. And yeah, my high school experience, it was good, but I hated school, and I was like eventually I got caught up in the wrong crowd. That's what I'm going to say. So like first I started off trying to like merge with others and being like on this right path, but because my differences were so big compared to them,
you ended up falling in with the people that were similar.
That were similar, and the people that are similar also have like the same mindset and the same traumas and the same toxic
One thing about trauma is there is a lack
trauma
of connection.
Bonding, yeah.
You try it's the trauma bonding is such a phenomenon because people who experience trauma really, really are desperate for connection in that sense. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So I was basically like, I got caught up with the wrong crowd and I was doing the wrong things. I was skipping school. I was getting into trouble. I was like in detention all the time. By the time I was 17, I was like way far off the deep end. This is when I was like, how Rachel said, like I was like turning up heavy, using drugs.
It was there too. Yep.
I dropped out of high school. So I have my adult education diploma
GED.
now. Well, not the GED. It's actually a diploma, but it's adult ed diploma.
Cute. We love that.
But it's not a GED. It's like
I know what you're talking about. When you finish like right after high school kind of thing. Yeah.
It's like I did it like
right away.
September.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had a boyfriend at 17 and he was kind of like my escape from being home because my house was so toxic and I honestly could not leave my room. If I went downstairs, it was like super chaotic, super commotion.
Feel that.
So it was just like weird. It was just weird. It was a lot going on. I was very like neglected emotionally. Like Rachel said, I mean, it's funny because I worked at a restaurant right across the street from here. My first job was at the sushi place. And I lied to them because it was under table. You have to be 16 to work, but I told them I was 15 just so they would hire me. No, I said that wrong. You have to be 16 to work. I was 15 and I told them I was 16.
Yeah.
And they believed me because they didn't.
It's under the table anyway.
Yeah, they were like, just write your name here and give me your number. And then they ended up calling me. So I was like eager to make money because my dad, I'm not going to like, I love my dad and I have a good dad, but he was not a very good masculine role model growing up. He was not
I get it. Completely.
He provided when he wanted to, and he provided the fun things. Like he would give me money. He would buy me like, he bought, I was one of those kids that had like a nice car at 16. I had like the nice designer clothes and stuff, but it was because.
All for the image. It was the image.
But it was my dad's way of like,
making up for
not providing, like, having a roof over your head, having clothes, food in the fridge. Like, my mom was really doing the heavy duty work, like, and that was my dad's way of how you said, just like making up for it, making amends, doing what he doing. So he felt like he was doing his part. To him, he swore he was doing his part, right? But yeah, I never really had a good masculine role model in my life. So that also led to me choosing the wrong men. And I love my dad and he's not a bad dad and he's always been there for me to a certain extent. So I'm not going to say anything like wrong. Yeah. I have a dad in my life, but because I never had a good masculine role model, that's what happened. And I ended up choosing the wrong men. Mm-hmm. And also another thing that really ever since I've like healed and stuff, made me realize that you choose wrong men because you've seen bad, like unhealthy relationships. I went through a whole rabbit hole where I was like, why do I keep choosing the wrong partner? I have a dad, you know what I mean? Like I don't have daddy issues. And I realized that, first of all, mommy issues are also a thing, but having a healthy example of a relationship is really essential. It doesn't just having a man or a mom or a dad or whatever in the home doesn't automatically mean that's the best model for you. No, but so what kind of like inspired you to change? So basically, all right. So when I was 17, I dropped out of high school, and I was my boyfriend was kind of my scapegoat, and he had his own like apartment. So I would just go stay with him, and then because I would run away from home a lot, but my parents would always call the cops on me to come get me, and then the cops would eventually come get me because I was a minor. But when I turned 18, my birthday's in March, so the school year ends in June. So at March, I was technically a legal adult. Yep. So that was the last day I came home. 18, I was like, they can't call the cops on me anymore. Yep. So I'm like, I'm out of here. I packed my bags and I never came back. They were going crazy, but that was my first relationship where like I was like it like mirrored to me my mom and dad's relationship, and it mirrored to me like all the toxic, you know, circumstances, and I was like very like traumatized from that. I ended up coming back home because I like literally like could not be in that situation anymore. And when I came back home, it was kind of the same thing. I was a little older, but my mom, how do I say this? Like, I really love my mom. Don't get me wrong. She's a great mom and she has a great heart, but we've never had like a connection. We don't have that kind of like connection where I could bond with her and I could talk to her.
Yep.
And I could, like, she's very like,
you're supposed to get unconditional love from your parents, and I don't feel like either one of us had that.
No, even to this day, like I love my mom. She's a good mom and she's a great grandma to my daughter. But yeah, we don't have that type of bond. But yeah, I came home. I was home for a little bit, and then I ended up getting into working in nightlife. And when I realized like I can make a lot of money off of that, I took off. I was enrolled in school and everything, but and that's another thing. My parents at that point, my mom couldn't take me to like real university. She couldn't take out the loans to go to real university, things like that. So I had to go to community college, but obviously that was going to be a dead end because me being home and being in like a bad environment was not going to motivate me to go to school. So I ended up dropping out of that college, and I was just, you know, working nightlife. I ended up going to Miami for a while because my friend, she was from Connecticut too, but she ended up getting us a job down there. So I was in Miami for a few months, and then I remember my friend, we were gonna work there for the summer, basically that's what we did. My friend ended up going back home, and then from there, I went to California for a little bit. I was out there. Then I went to Portland, Oregon. I lived out there for about 6-7 months. And it was a really cool experience. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had freedom and I had control like over my life. I didn't have to be warped and molded into anybody's agenda. Like I really got to be, I'm a very free-spirited person, and I really got to like experience that. And I had so much fun, and it was a great experience, honestly. Like that was like, I was super happy at that point in my life. And I ended up coming back to Connecticut because I was out there for like 2 years traveling to these places, and I honestly missed my family. I kind of like missed home, and I lost like my relationship to my family during that time, like my siblings, because I wasn't home and I wasn't talking to anybody, and they were all mad at me because I just took off.
Yep.
But I came back for a little bit, and that's when I met my daughter's father, and I ended up getting pregnant when I was young. I was like 20 years old when I had my daughter. Or I was 21. I just had turned 21 2 weeks ago. So I was 21. But yeah, I had my daughter, and that is what motivated me to change. Like that is when my life really did a whole 360, or at least I started taking those steps to do a whole 360. So yeah, I had my daughter really young. I was my daughter's father was, like I said, not the best man to have a child with. And I definitely went through some abuse in that relationship. I was a single mom by the time my daughter was 1.5 years. She's 4 now. So I've been a single mom for like over 3 years, I would say. And another thing that really like was the major catalyst to my,
spiritual growth and journey.
Yeah, my spiritual growth and journey was, so my daughter, she has special needs, and that being said, like she's blind, so she cannot see at all. She has no usable vision. And I found out when she was about 3 months old, and that to me was because I always grew up with a more like materialistic mindset. And don't get me wrong, like there's nothing wrong with that, but
that really made you...
It made me really turn my attention to my inner world and really like that was when my first was like, I need to heal this trauma. I need to heal myself, because if not, I'm not going to be a good mom in the mental state I'm in right now.
Yep.
Because not only having a kid young, not being,
from the best circumstances in the best situation,
not having a great partner,
Yep.
not being there 100% financially, that was my rock bottom. That was my rock bottom. I had a very hard pregnancy, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I really went through a lot. Those were like my, what is it called? It's like the dark years of your life.
Yeah.
That was what it was. Those 3 years were the darkest. I would say like 2.5, but they were really, really bad years for me. And finding out your kid has special needs and not having
support.
not only that, but not knowing that they can't see. Because this is how I thought of it, right? I used to think like when I was pregnant, I was like, you know what? When I have this baby, I'm going to hustle. My kid's going to have everything she wants. Like, I'm going to be that mom that buys her all the toys she wants. I'm going to be that mom that is like the bougie mom. My kid is always going to have everything that she wants, because that's kind of how I was growing up. And I was like, I refuse to let my kid not experience the same thing. And then when I found out she was blind, it was really crazy to me, because
It changes your whole
it was like my whole reality shattered. It's like everything I ever knew of life didn't matter anymore.
Changed in an instant, yeah.
Because think about it, like when your kid is blind, like it doesn't matter if you live in the mansion or if you live in the hood.
They can't see the shit anyway.
All she knows is there's a roof over her head.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if I drive a Benz or if I drive a hoopty. She just knows she's in a car.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if I buy her the biggest princess bed at the store. She just knows she's on a mattress and it's comfy.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. So it made me realize like
what really matters and what
who
doesn't.
am I?
Yeah.
Because at that point I was like, oh my God, like the only thing my kid is really looking at is my character.
Yeah.
And
ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
the only thing that's gonna make my kid happy is who I am.
Yeah.
My personality, the way I parent, the way I,
love her.
The way I love her, right? So for the first time, I really had that mirror was like facing me, and I had to look into it and really, who am I? And I had to work on my inner world, and it was crazy. It was a very transformative process.
But it got you here.
No, I'm in a very good place in my life now, and I'm
a great mom.
super happy. Thank you. But yeah, like it was a lot, and that's not a common thing to have. So I couldn't really relate to other people, and that's what it is, because people ask me like, what are the challenges of it? And it's more of an emotional challenge than anything.
Yeah.
Because my kid is a very chill baby, or she's 4 now, but she's still my baby. But she's a really chill kid. She's always been super chill, very easy to deal with. It's just the emotional aspect of not being able to see your kid, do things that other kids can do. And, I brought my daughter to Disney World twice before she turned 4. But that experience is not the same as a kid that can see Disney World.
Yep.
So it's just things like that make you
look at life differently.
Yeah, and then it really it was a crazy transformative process, and I didn't have support from my partner at the time. He was just like the type of man that like never really grew up. As a mom, when you have a kid, I feel like you're forced to grow up.
Yeah.
You don't have an option. And if you don't grow up, that your kid is going to suffer. Your kid is going to face the consequences, because it doesn't matter about you anymore. When you have a kid, nothing is about you anymore. And that's what I started to realize. And it wasn't like day one, I'm like, okay, let's be a better mom. No.
It's a process.
I cried and I numbed myself with, drinking and smoking, and I was in a very depressed place, and I used to say, why me, God, why me? But what really helped me change that perspective is when I would take her, because when I first had her, she had to go through a lot of testing, MRIs and things, just to make sure the condition that she had doesn't affect certain parts of the brain, and, doesn't have any more issues that come along with what she has. She has optic nerve hypoplasia, which is basically the nerve in your brain that connects, that relays the pictures that you see from your retina. Mm-hmm. So the brain is smaller than average. So her brain is not getting those pictures that the retina is relaying to it in simple terms. But Yes, it was crazy. And
Very, very transformative.
it was very transformative, but also I feel like feeling those emotions is what births the new me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, how you said, want to run from those emotions. And I've never been in therapy. My parents were the type that didn't believe in therapy. They were the type that were like, what are you trying to make us look bad? Like, you know, so.
Mine too, I would like to say therapy was court ordered. And then I tried to unalive myself. So then it was DCF ordered.
Yeah, so no, 100%. So I seeked out therapy myself when my daughter was about 1.5 years old. And I've always been like more spiritually in tune. So I've always wanted to understand things from an energetic state point of view. So I actually got a mentor that has made all the difference in my life. And I am so grateful to him for
just everything.
Everything. I would not be where I am without him today. So I have to, you know, give him his credits. But
yeah, so I mean, unless you have something else to add, that's basically the gist of who we are, where we come from. Very lightly touching on our experiences. I think, you know, if you're going to take one thing from listening to this, it's that, you know, moving forward, as you listen to the rest of our podcast, you know that we are not speaking from a place of privilege. We are not coming at you as people who
that's the point of this. We wanted to introduce ourselves on a more like vulnerable state, just so you guys have an understanding that like when we say these things, it's because we've really been through some shit.
And there's a lot of love behind it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people pass a lot of judgment and say a lot of really harsh things from a place of judgment, projection, maybe. But we've been there. We have completely different life experiences, but we've both come to the same, if not similar, conclusions about a lot of things.
Yeah. So and I also, sorry, really quick, I just wanted to touch one more thing. But yeah, so for my fitness journey, when I first had my daughter, I was like so depressed, and it's crazy how the body processes things, because some people like find pleasure in like overeating and things like that to cope. With me, it was like the opposite. It's like when I'm stressed out, I can't eat. I literally don't eat. I can live off like granola bars if I'm like so stressed out, and eventually I ended up becoming so skinny after I had the baby. I was the skinniest I ever was. I was like 95 pounds, and I was super
and how tall
depressed. Are you? I'm 5'1", but I was super
95
depressed.
Pounds is crazy.
I have some transformation pics and videos on my page, but I was so small, and now I'm like almost at my ideal goal weight, and that's where I got into the gym like about 2 years ago. But yeah, I'll talk about that more later. But yeah, I just wanted to say that like
she struggled with the complete opposite
end.
But so we kind of cover all of our bases here with this.
But it's like I was saying, like, one thing I really recommend is definitely getting a mentor, going to therapy, whatever you have to do. You need to process the trauma you're going through to be able to like overcome it. And
I always say you feel it now or you feel it later.
Right.
There's no 100%. Avoiding feeling it.
And that's been the catalyst. That's what's made all the difference in my life.
Also, I'd like to say, if you don't feel it later and you wait until you die, your family and your kids will feel it.
Yeah, it'll be a generational curse passed down.
That's the definition of generational trauma.
100%. So. But yeah, this is why we did this, to really give you guys an understanding that when we say certain things and when we talk about certain topics, is because we actually have overcome it. We're not just saying it from a place where we have no experience.
We don't know what we're talking about. We haven't been there. Like we have been there, and we have both been through some of the hardest things in the world. I'm not trying to discredit anybody else's experience, but we are not coming at you as trust fund babies with perfect, beautiful relationships and families. There is value to people who, you know, have experiences those things and the things that they say. But when we talk about a lot of hard things, it's because we've been there. So.
And let us know if you guys want us to like
elaborate,
dissect a little deeper into certain topics, because I know, especially for special needs children, it's like very hard to really process that.
Isolating,
And if anybody like wants to know a little bit more about that, I can definitely get into it, because like I said, I wish I had more people to learn from and connect to about that, because that was like the hardest part of my life so far. But If you guys have any other questions,
just
definitely let us know.
We're going to wrap that up there for today. Next time we'll get a little bit more into what we want to talk to you guys about on the podcast. We've dropped a couple episodes already, so go check those out. But thank you guys so much for listening and hearing about us. And this was our little Meet Your Hosts episode. But have a great night, and we'll hope to see you next time. Cute.